interview, ask you some questions. You can respond at the end. You can make a statement and we'll take a vote. You understand the process?
Yes, sir.
And we have with us today, Ms. Jasmine Cole and Robert Lancaster. Have Ms. Simone Smith who will be speaking at the appropriate time. We have Mr. Andrew Hunley, Brad Ewell, Donna Reifenschneider. We have Ms. Juanita Overfield, Charles Overfield that'll speak at the appropriate time, and Ms. Vicki Leach that will speak at the appropriate time. Jimmy Graves, DOC number 80971, second class offender. Parole eligibility date 6/17/2022. No good time, full term date life, murder and simple escape. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Graves, how old are you?
78.
Oh, and I'm going to apologize as well. You also have Kathy Nair, Richard Nair, and Jason Gowdy, it looks like, that are in attendance, I guess, with the pool. How old are you again? I'm sorry.
78.
And how many years have you been incarcerated?
50 years.
And what do you currently do there at the facility?
I run a computer-based program that does the tools inventory at the Automotive Service and Repair Center, a tool room clerk.
And you're a trustee,
Yes, sir.
Class A.
Yes, sir.
When's your last disciplinary write-up?
I want to say, I believe it was 2005.
Like, do you have a GED or high school diploma?
Yes, sir. I have a GED.
Okay, you got it there.
Yes, sir.
So what are your plans if you were to be released? Where are you going to go? What you going to do?
I plan to go through the transition program with the Louisiana Parole Project in Baton Rouge. Take all the available courses that they offer me and participate in anything they need me to do.
And
after that,
where would you go live? What's going?
I've been offered a place to stay, a house with 2 bedrooms, a barn where I can do my hobby craft. I make my living doing hobby craft here. I supplement what I don't get here. I do craft work. I've done it since 1984, and I make good money here, so I know I can make good money out there.
Where are you going to live?
In Crockett, Texas.
Crockett, Texas. Is that your home?
No, it's provided by a friend of mine that I've known since she was 13 years old. Her and her husband live in downtown Crockett. They have a home in the country, a 2-bedroom home on 30 acres of land with a big barn where I can do my hobby craft.
Good. Okay, well, you've been down a long time. Tell me about this. Is a terrible crime. I've gone through it, read through it. I know it's been a long time ago, but tell me exactly what was going on. Explain to me what was going on during this time. I'm well aware of the victims. I'm well aware of, of what was going on. Tell me about it. Were you on drugs? Were you on alcohol? What was going on during this time? Tell me about the crime.
I was on a 3-year run of crystal meth. I'd run up a real big debt with the people that were supplying it, and that I was also running drugs for. And I could not pay the debt. And they told me that I could pay the debt at a certain time and or suffer the consequences. And that I need to remember that my family would also suffer the same consequences. And he told me if I wanted to clear the debt, they had something I could do, that I would be paid money for that and clear my debt and get some more crystal meth.
And
I killed Mr. Overfield.
they directed to do that?
Yes, sir. In order to keep from paying the consequences of myself and my family.
What do you think about their consequences?
I didn't want to see my family die, and I didn't want to die.
What about Mr. Overfield, the consequences that have occurred for Mr. Overfield and their family?
At the time, all I could think about was survival. I'm sorry for what I did. I can't change that. Only thing I could think about was my 2-year-old son and my young wife and myself, frankly.
What are your thoughts about the victim and the victim's family now?
I'm going to carry the guilt and the shame and the sorrow of that act, no matter where I'm at, for the rest of my life. It haunts me constantly. I can't get away from it. I'm sorry for the family's suffering. I know that I have no idea what they went through since then. I've prayed for intervention for them from above. I wish I could change it, but I can't change what I did in the past. I've spent the last 50 years changing myself from the person that I was and the horrible thing that I did. I'm no longer that person.
So what have you been doing to change that? Looks like you've taken a lot of classes, a lot of courses, a lot of things. What have you taken that's that's affected you, that's really been helpful, that's helped you change?
I think the major one was the 100-hour pre-release program. It covers so many different areas, not only just the victims awareness, which I really needed to really understand what I did, but employment opportunities, counseling services would be available, government agencies that could help me, money management, all kind of different things would actually be beneficial. When I went through the victims awareness thing, I really came to the full grasp of exactly what I did. And it was unbelievable to me to go through that. And I was told to do the victims accountability letter and to be perfectly truthful. And I was. I've always taken responsibility for my crime. When I dried out in jail, I was disgusted with myself, ashamed of myself, and sorry for what I did. And I felt sorry for the family. But like I said, I could not undo that.
So have you taken substance abuse throughout the years? Obviously, you had a big, significant substance abuse problem.
I took substance abuse in AA when I first got through the sober group. But as I have said, it's a lifelong thing. I don't see any way other than to just stay with the programs and try to stay away from anything that would even lead me to even think in that direction again. I have not touched it in all these years since I've been locked up. It is available here, but it's a choice. And I made so bad choices before I came here that I now do not make the choice to mess with either, even though it is available.
Tell me, in 50 years, how many disciplinary write-ups you've had?
16, I believe.
That's very good. Very good. Not something common that we see. Gordon, you have any input for us?
So I was looking through his folder and he has a lot of volumes. So I didn't see a GED test and I also didn't see substance abuse in there. So you say you took substance abuse with the sober living?
The sober group in right in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things back then that the certificates may not have even gotten our jackets back then.
Okay.
I don't know. I got my GED because I got 2 Pell Grants And you can't get a Pell Grant without the GE verification and or high school education. And I was awarded 2 Pell Grants for 2-year-long courses, 5,500 for each one. You can't get the Pell Grants without the GED or
Back
diploma.
then you could, now you can. You can get the GED. You don't have to do all that. Okay, sir. So he did complete the $100 anger management. He did thank you for a change, victim awareness, and he did the victim accountability letter. And his tiger is low. No trouble here. He's been a model offender since he's been here. He's assigned to the trustee dorm, which is Camp F, and he works out at AS&R with the reentry. With fixing the state vehicles.
All right, thank you so much, Warren.
Welcome.
All right, we'll hear from Mr. Andrew Hunley now.
Andrew Hunley with Louisiana Parole Project. If it pleases the board, I'd like to quickly explain how Jimmy Graves became parole eligible. In the last legislative session, Senator Foyle sponsored a bill that was brought by many stakeholders who recognized there was a small group, fewer than 20 people, who we refer to as 10-6 lifers. They're individuals who pled guilty for crimes committed before 1973 and received life sentences. At the time, a life sentence was at 10 years and 6 months. You were eligible for release. The law changed shortly thereafter, so the individuals who had not reached their 10 years and 6 months did not get the benefit of that release. The legislation in Act 544 that was recently passed was to allow those individuals who were told that if they pled guilty, they would be able to come home after 10 years and 6 months, an opportunity. We recognize at Parole Project that Jimmy Graves committed a horrible crime. He has been held accountable, and he has spent over 50 years in prison for that crime that he pled guilty to. It's Parole Project's position that Jimmy Graves is a great candidate for parole release based on the work that he's done over 50 years of incarceration to better himself. At the age of 78, we propose he is no risk to public safety. Our reentry plan is for him to come through our residential program if he's released. And then once he completes our program, there is an ICOTS currently approved to Crockett, Texas. If the board, for whatever reason, is not satisfied with that reentry plan, Parole Project offers that we will provide him long-term housing in our program in Baton Rouge. If for any reason the board is not satisfied with the Crockett address. Based on time served, disciplinary record, and accomplishments, we feel like it's an appropriate time for Jimmy Graves to be granted parole. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we'll hear from Mr. Brad Ewell.
Y'all can switch places.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Brad Ewell. I'm Jimmy's son. I just want to talk to you a little bit about my father. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. First thing I want to address is the Overfield family. I can't tell you how sorry I am for what my father took from you, and I can't imagine what it's been like to grow up like you have after that crime. What I can tell you is I did not know my father back then. My father and I didn't know each other existed until 2 years or 3 years ago now. The man that he's described to me from back then and the man that everybody else that knew him back then was an awful man. He was a man that cared about himself before really anyone else. What's different now, and the reason I sit here before you today, is the only part of that man that I believe that still exists is his body that's sitting in this room. His spirit, his mindset, everything about him is a different person now. One of the reasons I feel comfortable telling you that is for 27 years now, I've been a police officer. My current job is looking for and arresting people that did the exact same thing that my father did 50 years ago. If for a moment that I thought he was still that person, I wouldn't sit in this room. I would never see him again. When I first met him, I intended it to be a one and done meeting. I was going to meet the person that was responsible for me to be on this earth and then move on with my life. When I sat down with him, what I expected was a man that told me that, as probably y'all have heard more than once, the world was against him and none of this was his fault. The person that sat down with me told me that he had no one to blame for this but himself and has regretted it ever since the day he did it. And from the moment that we had that first meeting, we've stayed in contact, stayed in touch, and I've become an advocate for him. The best example I feel I can give you of the change that I've seen from the person that's described to me, the one that I see now, is he sent me some money to hang on to for him to make purchases from the catalog that inmates can get items from when they need clothes, food, and things like that. And when he needs things and the catalog comes open, I make the order for him and put it and send it to him. With the little bit of money he has as a prisoner, one of his friends that's been out of prison for quite a while after COVID, his hours got cut. He was having a hard time making his ends meet. And my father gave up a quarter of everything he sent to me to give to this man for nothing else other than he was a friend of his who needed something that my father could provide. I don't think the man in 1972 that landed here would have been that man to give a dime to anybody. Outside of that, what I can say is, as Mr. Hundley explained, he came here under a 10-6 sentence. And in the course of about 9 years, watched his sentence go from a possibility of being released to never having a possibility to be released until this past year. A lot of people, I think, would take that opportunity to decide, well, I can now do whatever I want to do for the rest of my life because it does not matter anymore. And instead of making that choice, my father's decided that he wanted to be a better man, regardless of if it was a better man for the rest of his life in Angola or a better man coming out of this prison. When I've looked at y'all's mission statement, y'all talk about providing rehabilitative opportunities that support a successful transition into a community. What I can tell you as a police officer is those opportunities are great for people that want them. People that don't want to change, don't change. You can give everybody the same 100-hour class, and people that don't want to be different will be the same person after that 100-hour class. That's not my father. My father jumped into all those classes, took them all because he wanted to be a person that he wasn't back then. I think he's said it a bit. He and I've talked about it at length. He despises the person he was in 1972. I think if you introduce the two men to each other, the young man in 1972 and him today, they couldn't be anywhere near each other because they wouldn't be able to stand each other. And I think that he's done everything he can to make himself a good prisoner and a good person to be eligible to be released. He's got a great support system between Ms. Reif-Schneider that'll speak later. Me, I'm in his corner to help him with anything he needs. He's got other family and friends out in the community that are here to ensure that he is never a problem, number one, and that number two, he has all the support he needs to be successful. And I would hope that you would grant him parole.
Thank you for your comments. We'll hear from Ms. Reif-Schneider now. Brief comment from Ms. Reif-Schneider.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good. Go ahead and make a brief comment.
What would you like me to make a comment on? I've known Jimmy Graves since I was 13 years old. He was a very good friend of my father's. I lost contact with him right before my father passed and got back in contact and have been in contact with him and supported him for almost 30 years. As far as his hobby craft stuff, bowls that he has done that I've done for Christmas presents and stuff like that. I have 30 acres, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. He is welcome to stay there till whenever he wants to, until whenever God decides that he can't be here. My husband is on board with that. We have checked into 2 vehicles, so he would have a truck to do his hobby craft. There are all kinds of little art shows around those little towns. I am 32 years sober. I run an AA meeting every Saturday night in Crockett, Texas. You can ask anybody, they'll tell you. I am a certified counselor through my priest at church that I went to Houston, Texas, and got certification. He's a very close, dear friend of mine, and I would really like for him to be out because he will be sitting next to me in an AA meeting. So we go, and I have already talked to him to attend church. We're both Catholic. We could go to church every Sunday morning. I'm old school. I cook old fashioned dinners on Sundays. He will be attending dinners at my house. So he's 10 minutes from me. If he needs anything, my husband will help. We're all on board to help. Everybody that is here is on board to help him.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comment.
Okay. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Mr. Charles Overfield. And let me introduce Miss Juanita Overfield and Miss Vicki Leach. If I didn't introduce you ladies first, I apologize. Mr. Overfield, would you like to make a statement?
A brief statement. When all of this happened, I was stationed in the military. I was up in Arkansas at Little Rock Air Base. Actually, my life kind of stopped that night. I was on a patrol at a missile site. I got a call to come in. And from that call, I remember nothing. I don't remember leaving the base. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember the funeral. I don't remember any of it. Today, I'm being treated for PTSD and chronic recurring depression because of all of this. Any references that I make in life are all based on March the 9th, 1972. That was my sister's birthday. And my dad's birthday was a day before my little sister here. So our life really kind of stopped on March the 9th, and we really haven't recovered. I hear people wanting to hear Jimmy, help Jimmy, but I haven't seen anybody that's been willing to help us. We've had to struggle. We've lost everything. We lost our home in Bossier, and we've never really recovered from this. So that's really all I have to say, because I really was not at home that night. I was more caught up in the aftermath. But I was thrust into the position of having to raise a family and take care of a handicapped mother at 19. And that really wasn't fair.
Yes, sir.
But that's really all I have to say.
So sorry. Yes, sir. Miss Vicki?
Yes. This is really difficult. I first want to thank you all for being here today. I understand you hear a lot of victim impact statements, and I know that can be emotionally draining and difficult, but I'm sure you will understand this is difficult for us too. But I do appreciate all of you giving my family and I the opportunity to be the voice for my father, since he no longer has one. My father, Sergeant First Class Charles E. Overfield, did a lot for his country, and we were very proud to call him Daddy. He was meant to do great things, but he never got that opportunity. He was 39 years old when he was violently murdered and tossed out on the side of the road like garbage. And there are things I want to point out that will always haunt us. He was murdered on my sister Charlotte's 16th birthday. She never wanted to celebrate it again after that. And also on that day, she decided to become an adult and also stepped in and helped my mother raise me and my other sister, Darlene. His birthday is one day before mine, a constant reminder of another birthday that I won't be sharing with my father. Knowing that this man came into our house and saw my mother was handicapped, and he saw us girls and still murdered my father. And that the biggest thing that breaks my heart is my mother blaming herself still to this day, because she gave them my father's phone number for them to contact him at work. Now I sit here and I wonder how it's fair that someone in prison for taking another person's life gets the chance to ask for freedom, how they get the opportunity to beg for the chance to live out the rest of their life with their family. My father also begged for his life, an opportunity to go home. He was denied that opportunity. My father's sentence was death, and no one can change that. So why should this prisoner's sentence change? My father has 8 grandchildren, 17 great-grandchildren, and 5 great-great-grandchildren that he will never, ever get to know, and they will never know what an awesome person he was. He never got to walk us down the aisles. My mother is 94, and they're supposed to be living their life together, but she didn't get that. So it still affects us. It's never not affected us. 50 years. It's just like it happened yesterday some days. Thank you for hearing us.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. All right, Mr. Graves, would you like to make a statement on your behalf?
Yes, sir, I would. I've always taken accountability for my actions. I know it was horrible. I can't change that. I pray for the family ever since. I have no idea what all they went through. I'm sorry for what they went through. I can't undo that. I can't change my past. I've changed myself for the better. I'm sorry for my past. I wish some way that there could be a better thing for the family of Mr. Overfield. I can say I'm not the same person that I was. I was given a plea agreement with the understanding that I would have a chance to get out of prison. The death penalty was never sought in my case because of my circumstances. I'm sorry for the Overfield and their family. Thank you for hearing me.
All right, Ms. Simone Smith, would you like to wrap up?
Yes, thank you. May it please this honorable committee, my name is Simone Smith, and I am affiliated with the LSU Law, Parole, and Reentry Clinic. My supervisors, Jasmine Cole, is in the room with me today, and Robert Lancaster is with us over Zoom. I just wanted to reemphasize Mr. Graves' apology to the victims and thank them for their testimony and bravery of sharing that with us today. And I acknowledge their feelings of loss and that nothing can undo Jimmy's crime. But he has spent the past 50 years trying to reform and atone for his crime. He has spent countless hours in programming and has spent countless hours reflecting on his crime and feeling remorse. And, you know, through those two, through his programming, through his thoughts on reflecting, and through his maintenance of his strong support system on the outside, he has been able to completely transform himself from a man who would commit such a heinous crime like that to a man who has tears in his eyes, even having to think about the suffering that he inflicted upon a family. So because of Jimmy's strong reentry plan, his full support from his family and from Miss Donna Refschneider, who has been an alcohol counselor and will support Jimmy in his sobriety commitment for life, we ask that this honorable committee grant Jimmy Graves parole.
All right, thank you. Now prepare to vote. I'll vote first. Mr. Graves, this is a terrible tragedy. I want to, thank the victims for being victims, family for being here. I know this is an awful, tragic situation, terrible tragedy. My heart goes out to the victims' families. It's a bad deal. It's a bad deal, Mr. Jimmy. And look, that's why we're up here. Nothing's easy. None of these cases are easy. They're not for us. They're not easy for the victims and for the families, for everybody involved. We have to make a decision based on what we've seen over the last 50 years and what do we think be good for the community at large. My vote today would be based on the good institutional record, positive warden's comments, things you've done, the support system you have. My vote would be to grant your parole, just one vote. My vote would be to grant your parole. I have you go to NAA 2 times a week, go to the Parole Project, and then to the ICOT Texas. You have community service 6 hours per month and no contact with the victim's family. Again, just one vote. This is not an easy case. This is a difficult case, probably one of the most difficult we've had. So it's one vote. Ms. Wise?
Mr. Graves, I didn't, when I read your files and everything last night, I couldn't make up my mind. I just really could not get a clear, but I see, that you recognize that you did a lot of harm. You healed yourself, and now you've been helping others. And that's, that's it. To the Overton family, I just want you to know that you're doing a whole lot better than you realize. God has blessed your mother to be here for 94 years. That speaks volumes. You're doing a lot better than you realize. And I thank you for your courage and participation today. But for me, I concur with my colleague. My vote is to grant for the reasons already been stated on the record. And I concur with the special conditions that's been stated.
Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Overfield family, no one can understand the pain and grief you have suffered and talked about. I certainly appreciate the courage that it took for you to be here today. As a parole board, our responsibility is to look at the facts of the case and look at all of the other factors that go into the case. Everybody has a role in this. Law enforcement has a role in arresting someone. The prosecutor has a role in prosecuting that person. The judge has a role in sentencing that person. And the legislature has a role in preparing the laws or changing the laws. And they've changed several times in this particular case. Our role today is to look at all of those things and to look at not who Mr. Graves was 50 years ago, but who he has become today. And as unfair as that might sound to victims, our responsibility is to see if he has rehabilitated himself. And clearly he has. He's got a good disciplinary record. He's been in prison for 50 years. He's got an excellent transition plan. He's got a good sobriety plan. My vote likewise would be to grant with the same conditions as outlined by Mr.
Right, you have 3 votes to grant your parole. Today, your parole has been granted with the stipulations of state. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. This might have been one of the most intense hearings I've seen. It's hard to unpack this. It's really hard to unpack this. He's been in prison for 50 years. When he initially pled, he had the eligibility to seek parole after 10. And then the law was changed. And they made a lobby called 10-6 Lifers, which only affects about 25 people, seem to lobbying those people who were basically lied to by the government. His son, who was 2 at the time, who he only recently created a relationship with, is a police officer. And then you see the victim family there that was just completely destroyed and still looks in pain. And I feel it was absolutely the right decision, but how do you look at their the victim, and they're just, it was probably like it happened all over again. They lost their daddy, and that wrecked their lives. You know, Like I feel like anxiety watching this. Just it's a mixture of emotions, and again, I think it was the right. It absolutely was the right thing to do. Interesting to have such a close a friend, a female who's married, that's taking care of him like that. That's a real interesting scenario. Giving him really just seems like an idyllic way to end his life. A house in the mountains, 2-bedroom, 2-bath up in the mountains, middle of nowhere, and somewhere he can make his stuff. And you can make a movie out of this one. Like I say that for a few of them. This you can make a movie. All right. Love to hear your thoughts.